Okay, well, good evening to everyone, or good morning if anyone is joining us from Japan. And my name is Paul Pass. I am the Executive Director of the Japan America Society of Dallas-Fort Worth. Thank you so much for joining our virtual sake tasting and food pairing. We thank you as well for everyone's support on many levels over the past year. We know this has been a trying time, and we also wish for your continued health, and we look forward to offering more in-person events this fall. There will actually be an in-person event at Globe Life Field, which is the baseball stadium here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That event will take place on August 4th, and I will share more details after the main part of our program. We also hope that soon Japan will see higher vaccination rates as we have already seen in the United States. Thank you to our program partners, Sake Social, who you hear from in just a moment, and Jetro Houston. And we are so glad that we could work with you for our annual sake program in 2021. In order for you to best experience our program, please use the chat box if you have any comments and the Q&A box if you have questions for our speakers. We will have questions at about a quarter till the hour, so about 6:45 p.m. Central. And please address those audience questions after those presentations are completed. I guess if you do actually have some questions in the middle, please feel free to share those within the Q&A box. Great. So now I would like to introduce Maricela Maddox, who is the co-founder of Sake Social, to start our event. Maricela, please feel free to begin. And Maricela, I think you, let me see.
There we go. Here we go. I just want to welcome everyone to today's event. I wish we could all be in person, but we're excited that you're here to participate with us and try some sake and hopefully enjoy it with some of the food pairings that we've suggested that you try the sake with. I'm here today with Kelly McKissick, who is a partner with us at Sake Social. She brings a tremendous experience of wine sommelier background, but she's also learning sake along with all the rest of us, which has always been our mission here at Sake Social. We've been around for about 12, 13 years, and we deliver sake straight to your door. So we, which is the opportunity for you to experience sake, but really we're also trying to educate people on the history and the culture and the process of making sake and all of those other parts to make it less intimidating for people to be curious about and experiment. So we selected some recipes that were sent to you, and we also selected some sake brews that we wanted you to give you a full sake experience, and we're gonna get started with that. Kelly?
Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning. I'm Kelly, and I'm the sommelier for tonight. Thank you for the introduction, Maricela. It's been great learning and working with Sake Social, and I hope that I'm able to share with you what I've learned, because as you may not be aware, sake is so big and so great, and sometimes it can feel like you're getting lost in the shuffle. But tonight we're going to try to break down some of the mysteries surrounding sake, and we're going to try to make it really fun for you so that the next time you're online at Sake Social or you're in the store, you won't feel lost. You'll know exactly what you need to do to enjoy a beautiful bottle of sake. So for those of you who are familiar with sake, and for those of you who might be new to it, what is sake? I'll tell you about that. Sake is the traditional Japanese alcoholic beverage, and it is made of rice. It's a brewed beverage, and a lot of times people think that it's a wine, but it's more closely related to a beer than it is to wine in process, because it's a fermented product. And there are 4 ingredients that go into sake. It's rice, water, a funny little thing called koji mold, which I'll explain, and yeast. And out of those 4 ingredients, we can get a wide variety of sakes, ranging from really light and clear and aromatic to cloudy sakes. And we have a good range of them, I think, that we are going to showcase for you tonight. And with those different styles, you can drink them at different temperatures as well, too. And Maricela and I will explain that to you. I think we have one sake tonight. This is one of the pairings that we have, Manutsuru Crane. This one can be had at room temperature, and it can also be had heated. So we'll get into that a little bit later with our pairing. Okay, just 1 minute here. Should I just jump right into the first pairing, Marcella? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I guess what I should say first is there might be some confusion about what vessels to drink your sake from. If you have one of these little glasses, these ceramic cups, that's totally fine. For our review of the sake tonight, I think we like to recommend a white wine glass, because this will help you find the aromas and some characteristics in the sake that you probably wouldn't be able to find in a little ceramic cup. So if you don't already have a wine glass, please go ahead and find one. And if you don't have a white wine glass, if you only have a little cup, or if you even have a water cup, that's totally fine too. Don't limit yourself just because you don't have the proper drinking vessel. All right. Okay. So I guess what I can explain about sake is we talked about the 4 ingredients that go into making the sake. And depending on how much the ingredients are processed, you'll get a different variety of sake. So the first sake we're going to talk about tonight is a very clear sake. It's from this bottle. I think everybody has one. Let me get it open here. You have yours, Maricela?
I do.
Yeah, so this is the Junmai Daiginjo Sake Platinum. It's from Ozeki Sake USA. I'm not sure if everybody can see that. It's a beautiful little bottle. It's very, very cute. And it's, when you pour it into your white wine glass, it's a clear liquid. Okay, and we have it paired with this. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Jump in for a second and just share a little bit about the Ozeki Brewery.
Oh, please, yes.
Yeah, so the Ozeki Brewery is been around in Japan for 300 years. It's a very well-known sake in Japan, and about 40 years ago in the 1970s, just as Japanese culture was taking off here in the United States and people were becoming very curious about the food and sake, they decided to open up a location, a brewery in California, Hollister, California. And the one that we're drinking today is actually brewed in California. And the reason that they went to great lengths to find a location that sort of mimicked the geography and had the natural resources that were in Japan that they found in California. And I found it really interesting that one of the things that they did around the same time when they were opening their brewery in the United States was they started the Ozeki One Cup right in 1964, which was the year that the Tokyo Olympics were taking place. And we're celebrating the Olympics this coming next week. The Tokyo Olympics will be taking place. Right. And Kelly, I know you're familiar with Japan. And so cups of sake and shochu are very commonly found in vending machines and convenience stores. We're not there here in the United States yet, but it's becoming a trend here. A lot of people are curious about it and asking us if we sell the individual cups, and they're very darling. So they were the ones who started that trend back in 1964 in preparation for the Olympics. So that's a little bit of information about that brewery.
Very cool. So I guess the cups would make it easier to walk around and to maneuver without having to carry a bottle and a drinking vessel. Is that right?
Yeah. Super portable, right? It's all in one.
Very friendly too. Yeah.
Right.
Very cute. Okay. So that's really good to know. As I guess when we're talking about sake too, rice is very important. I mean, rice is the main ingredient, but it's not the table rice that we eat. The table rice is very different than the rice that they use for making sake. Table rice has fat and proteins around it and not a lot of starch that we need to make sake. And it's funny to say that it doesn't have a lot of starch, because when you're eating it, it is a starch. But when we're talking in sake terms, we need a lot more starch. So the grains of rice for sake are a lot larger. I should have a little chart or a little picture to show you, but grains of table rice are a lot smaller and sake grains are a lot larger. And in the very center of the sake grain of rice is starch. It's called shimpaku in Japanese. And what the breweries, what the producers need to do is they need to get to that core of starch. And from there, the starch can be turned into sugars, and the sugars will then be eaten by the yeast to make alcohol. And the way that these starches are turned into sugars is they use what is called koji mold. So these are little mold spores that are propagated onto the rice after it's been processed and steamed, and they're added into a big fermentation tank. So you polish the rice, you get it from the field, it's a brown rice. It comes in, it gets polished, and depending on how much the rice is polished or milled, will determine the type of sake that's being made. If you polish a whole lot off, 50% of the original size, you'll have a really beautiful Junmai Daiginjo like we have here tonight. For some of the sakes that are not polished as much, you'll have a lot of sediment left. This is our Nigori sake. You'll have a lot of sediment remaining, and this creates a different style of sake. It's not bad, it's delicious, but it just has different characteristics and different, it's a different style. So polishing also determines the grade of sake. There's regular table sake, which is called futsushu, a little tongue twister. And then you get into, and that's the rice is polished at 70%. So 70% of the original grain size. Then if you polish 60%, it gets into the premium category, which is called ginjo. So the sake is a lot more aromatic and floral. And then as you polish more, 50%, sometimes even 35% of the original size of the grain of rice, you'll have a really elegant, a really beautiful perfumey sake. So that's just to explain the process a little bit. And the koji mold spores we were talking about earlier, those are important because they help to break down the starches. The rice by itself doesn't have sugar to just be able to make an alcoholic drink, like grapes do. Grapes have the sugar in the juices so that when they're fermented, they just go right into this process and it turns into wine. And it's a nice little easy process. It's not to discount the winemakers, but the sake makers, toji masters, they have a lot more work. They've got to really monitor how much the rice is polished, and then they've got to monitor the koji mold spore production, breaking it down and making this beautiful liquid that we enjoy called sake. All right, so we're getting it into the pairing, so I don't bore everybody too much.
Can I ask you a quick question, Kelly, about that process? Do you want to speak a little bit about how long that takes, you know, from the polishing and the milling and then the addition of the koji to actually having the beverage ready? Absolutely. So the polishing process, that can take from 12 hours to 36 hours. It depends on how much the rice needs to be polished. So if you're making a ricier style sake that doesn't need to be polished as much, it'll be a much quicker process. Once the rice is polished, it needs to be washed and steamed because it's still too raw to be able to be used. So they steam the rice. And then about 30% of that rice that's steamed is used for the koji mold propagation. Because you can't just throw koji mold spores into the fermentation tank. So they take some of the rice, they prepare it with the koji mold spores, and that enables the starches to be converted to sugars. And all of this happens in one tank, which is really cool. It's called multiple parallel fermentation. So in winemaking, it's a little different. It doesn't, sorry, I'm getting a little confused with my notes here. It doesn't happen all at once in one go. It happens in different steps. But in sake making, everything happens in that one tank. And how long does it take? It takes about 3 weeks once the rice and once the 4 ingredients are in the tank. The water, the koji mold spores, the yeast. And it could be 3 weeks, or it could take a little bit longer than that to make a bottle of sake once it's been processed and fermented in the tanks. Yeah. You know, yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Great. All right. I don't know if everybody's cooking tonight or if you decided you were going to hold off on the cooking and try the pairing a little bit later. But our first pairing tonight is miso steak salad, and we're pairing it with the Ozeki Platinum Junmai Daiginjo, which is this little blue bottle here.
I'm just gonna go right ahead and take a taste. Oh, so for those of you who don't have the recipe right in front of you, this is a salad with grilled steak, and the salad dressing has miso paste, sugar, sesame oil, garlic. There's some red onion inside as well, some cherry tomato, radishes, button mushrooms, sesame seeds. So I'm getting a lot of toasty characteristics from the salad, and also the steak is grilled. So it's going to add a little bit of depth to our salad as opposed to just a different preparation of the meat. So I'm going to take a bite here, and then I'm going to take a sip. Delicious. So our sake is really light. It's very fragrant. It has floral notes. It has some melon. It's honeydew melon. It's really light. And I think it's a great complement to the dish here because we have also fruity notes in the salad. We've got the tomatoes we talked about. We've got pepperiness that's on the steak, also pepperiness from the radishes. And the miso is not too overpowering. I used a white miso paste. I'm not sure if it's going to be easy for you to find that, but I used a white miso paste. The sesame oil, all of this kind of is harmonious and works really nicely together. And it brings out the fruitiness of the sake. And I think that's why we decided to pair it this way. Yeah.
What are some other cuisines that you might suggest with a Junmai Daiginjo like this?
So this is a lighter style sake. I don't mean lighter style in alcohol. I just mean in body. So I would do like the grilled meats are really nice with this. This would be really nice for appetizers. It would be nice with maybe a little fish croquette. I think that would be really lovely. Yeah. Is there any questions here about this? And everybody got a copy of this recipe, is that correct, Maricela?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
And if not, it looks like they can contact the Japan America Society and they will resend them if need be.
Okay. All right. Did I miss something? Did you have any questions about this pairing?
I didn't have any questions. Are there any questions out there, Paul?
We don't have any questions thus far.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Great. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay.
The next one is the Montessori that you mentioned earlier, the crane Junmai.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to go right back to this one really quickly, just before we move on to the next one. It's this one should be served chilled. This one is not a heated sake because it takes a lot of time to process this, and you want to get it to this really beautiful, elegant stage. So heating it will kind of diminish those aromas that we discovered in the sake. So you should always have the Junmai Daiginjos chilled. That's how they shouldn't be heated, and in a white wine glass or in the little ceramic cup. If you're with friends, I think it's nice to have a little cup because it's a little bit more friendly and you can move around some more. I mean, I love wine. I'm a French girl. We love wine, but wine glasses are never going to stop me from drinking. But if you have a party and you have a lot of people to serve sake for, little cups I think are great. But always serve this one chilled. This is perfect. And I'm going to pause really quickly to go to the kitchen and get my next pairing. I'll be right back.
And while you do that, there is a question that I'll answer. It looks like someone is asking, how similar or different is the Ozeki sake brewed in California versus Japan? And They offer, what I will say, I've not tried the Ozeki from Japan because the way things are regulated, we're only able to get the ones that they have sent to us, the ones that we get from California. I've never had the ones from Japan. But they do offer different lines over there in Japan. They have more offerings. They have more different styles of sake and different options in Japan than they do here in California. I think quality-wise, the Ozeki Brewery is been around for a long time, and as everyone in this event knows, quality is utmost importance to the producers of sake. And I don't think that they would put their name on something lesser quality in California than they would in Japan. So, any other questions? So the next one.
I agree with you. I don't think they would ever produce a lesser sake just because of distance or because of maybe some small challenges. I think so much goes into, there's so many rules and regulations around sake making that I think they would feel really bad bending the rules or try to cheapen it. And it's also something that they're really proud of. It's something that they work really hard for. They have wonderful relationships with the rice farmers, and the master of the brewery, Toji, the master brewer, has a lot of responsibilities in there. So I don't think that they would try to kind of cut corners to make a lesser quality sake. I think they're very proud of what they produce. Yeah. So I agree with you there. Cool. Let's see here. Our next sake in our lineup is the Manotsuru Crane. This little guy. This is a dry sake. Oh, I guess we should talk about the labels. Maricela, should we talk about the labels later? Because there's a lot of good information on the back that I think would be worth breaking down a little bit. We could do that later, or we could do that.
We could do that for this one now so that we see what since we have it on hand right here.
Absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to show you the back of the label, and we can go through it together if you have it. And if you don't, when you look at it again, you'll be able to understand. Yeah. So this is Manotsuru Crane, Karakuchi. And on the top, it tells you a little bit about the sake and a little descriptor of it. I won't read everything. I'll go through where it says grade, honjozo. Honjozo means that the rice was polished to 70% of its original size. So a lot of the fats and the proteins were still remaining on the grain before it was turned into sake. And this type of sake, this style, is a richer sake, and it has a lot more umami, a lot more taste, flavor, and also has lactic characteristics like yogurt, also of bready, yeasty notes as well. So this is, I think, perfect with our pairing with pasta. We have a vegetable pasta that's coming up. I'm going to be reviewing that with you. This sake is also really neat because you should drink it at room temperature, and you can also heat it. And I have a cup with boiling water, which is why I muted my screen just a minute ago. I have some boiling water, which I will transfer the sake to, and then we'll talk about the characteristics and how it changes from room temperature to warm. And it really does change. It kind of brings out a little bit more of the characteristics that we like about the sake. Let's see what else. It says the region is Sado Island, Niigata. Niigata is a very famous sake making region. They have a lot of mountains and a lot of snow melt. So the water that comes from Niigata is soft, doesn't have a lot of minerals. Is that correct? Is that what you were saying before to me, Maricela?
Yes, and I'm going to actually pull up a little map so that we can see where this is. Does everyone see this? Do you see that, Kelly?
Yeah, there it is.
And so this brewery is actually on the Sado Island, which has been included with the Niigata prefecture. The brewery itself has been around since 1885. So, one thing I've learned over the years is that sake brewery has multi-generational aspect to it. It's not something that was started 40 years ago. Most of these breweries have been around for over 100 years and have been passed down from family through the generations. So this one has been around since 1885. The Sado Island right there is the second largest island in Japan, and it is known for, geographically, it has a flat plain in the middle of the island, and it's surrounded by two large mountainous regions, which lends itself to some beautiful clean water that comes down from the mountains down into that plain area where they grow the rice for the sake. And so, as you mentioned earlier, Kelly, there's the 4 ingredients in sake, and it's really important that you get the right rice and the best quality water, whether it's mountain water or well water, or sometimes it's from the other parts where there are volcanoes, and it's just very well purified. Right. The water here is a soft water, and it has very few minerals in it. And this brewery is known for sustainability. They have a strong commitment to sustainability. They have got many awards for sustainable growing of their rice, and also for renovating a school where they opened up a second brewery recently. So
fantastic.
We feature 4 of their brews at Sake Social, and they're one of my favorites because you can try all 4 of them and really experience the different levels from one location of sake. So their Maho, is a very nice Daiginjo, and then they have this Junmai that we're going to try tonight. So
wow, that's awesome. That's great. I guess we'll continue with the back label. The rice on here is Koshibuki. So still within the family of sake rice, there are different reasons why producers will choose different types of rices for their sake. And as Maricela mentioned, this rice is local to the region. But unlike wine, sake, they can get their rices from different places. So there are no rules that really govern where the rice comes from. And I think a lot of producers try to stay local. They try to honor the rice farmers who are in their areas that grow the rices there. It all helps with the harmony and the end result of the sake. But it doesn't stop some rice producers from traveling really long distances to get the best quality of rice for the type of sake they wish to produce. Well, if we're talking about Champagne, for example, the rules are very strict. The grapes can only come from Champagne. All of these different regulations and things must be met in order to qualify for Champagne. So they couldn't buy grapes from California or even another part of France. It has to come from Champagne. But we don't have that in sake. And I think there are good things and there are interesting things about that. So I love that the rice is local too. It all keeps them in line with their sustainability and keeping everything local. Nihon Shudo. So that's interesting. If you don't speak Japanese, I mentioned before at the very beginning, Nihon Shu is how I think, or maybe I should have. Nihon Shu is how you say sake in Japanese. Nihon is Japan and Shu is alcohol. So on the back, it says Nihon Shudo, and this refers to the residual sweetness of the sake. So on some bottles, it might say SMV, sake meter value, and that just tells you how much sweetness or dryness is in the sake. And on the very front of the label, it says dry sake. So there's not a lot of residual sweetness in this sake. That's what it means. And this other word under Nihon Shudo, Seimai Buai, is it says it's polished to 65%. So 35% of the rice is milled away. So okay, it's still within that 70%. It's less than that. So some sakes have 70%. This is 65% of what remains of the rice once it's been polished. And I think it's good to note that the rice that's milled and polished away is not wasted. So there's a lot of leftover. And what do they do with that? Well, it's used for a lot of different applications in food and cosmetics in pet food and feed for animals. So don't ever think that all the rice that's being polished away is a vanity effort and that it's just gone and that, oh, that's too bad. It all is reused. And also, once the rice is into the fermentation tank, it makes this cloudy sake. All sake is cloudy like this, but then it's filtered, and all sake by law is required to be filtered. And why do we have residual rice in this Nigori sake? I'm sorry, I'm stepping on on your pairing here, but there's a lot to say about it. The rice before it becomes nice and clear is milky like this, and it has to be filtered. So it goes through a very large mesh. So the rice solids are able to float through. But what about clear sakes? What happens to the rice solids that were taken away? These are also used in cooking applications. I think chefs have taken this really cool approach of drying the moromi, which is the mash, the leftover rice solids, and they use them as seasonings. So if you can ever get your hands on moromi mash, I think that would be really cool to try as a rice seasoning, because it has salt, it has all the cool umami flavors in it, and now it's used in a different cooking application. So that's neat. Also cosmetics. If you take a look on the internet, you could find rice or sake cosmetics, and that's exactly what it is. It's the solids that were strained away that the brewery doesn't need anymore, but that other companies can use. And so everything is used. Nothing really goes to waste. Okay.
When I was there a year ago, they were taking the mash. This one brewery, I visited many of them, but this is the only brewery I saw doing this. And they were taking the mash and they put it in this machine and they were making crackers out of it.
Oh.
And then they would dry them. And then the people who worked at the brewery, their families and locals, they would sell it at their local. Many of the breweries have like a local store within their brewery that you can come and buy from or tour. And so they would sell these mashed crackers.
Oh, wow.
They were delicious too.
That is so cool. Yeah, it's so fun. These different ways they come up with reusing the solids and not wasting. Because I think at the very beginning, if I'm correct in my historical recollection here, Japanese people would use sake in temples. So the priests and the monks would make sake to thank kami, which is God in Japanese, to thank him for the rice. And they found a way to do that by honoring and by making sake. So they didn't want to waste any part of it. And I remember Maricela mentioned that I'm familiar with Japan. When I was a teenager, I lived in Japan for 2 years. I don't speak very much of it, but I do remember some things. And I remember a cartoon and it was a little boy who dropped some of his rice on the floor, and the god was crying. Kami was crying because how dare you waste your rice? It's so precious. It's so important. So as we mentioned before, sake is more than just an alcoholic beverage that you can, have with anything. It's part of the culture. You are very thankful and you're very grateful that it's abundant. And so when you use it in different ways, you're thanking God. I think that's how the Japanese people look at it. They're thanking God, and it's used in many different facets of life. It's used in the temples as blessings. It's used in weddings. It's used celebrations of life. It's used as celebrations end of life. It's all kinds of things, and festivals, the Olympics, as Maricela mentioned. So it's more than just a beverage. It's really, if you're going to put it in one word, it's culture. And I think that it's really interesting to see this culture becoming international culture, because I'm French American, African American, but I love sake. And, Maricela, you love sake too. You're not Japanese, but it's just this language of sake is very international. I know a friend in India who is interested in making sake there, and he's trying and he's doing his best. And there are people in Spain who are really innovative with coming up with rice grains that kind of imitate Yamada Nishiki, which is the main rice that is used for sake. So it's very international. And I love that it doesn't just stop in a glass or in a little bottle. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Are there any questions about this? No? Okay. I guess
Well,
we'll
there's
go
a
on
lot of questions, but I think we're going to get to those at the end.
later. Okay. All right. So this next pairing is fettuccine with asparagus, peas, artichoke, and lemon. And we decided to pair it with this Manotsuru crane, which we mentioned before. I'm going to pour it at room temperature, and then I'm going to pour it warm, just to tell you what I find the differences are. That's another difference between sake and wine. You can't really do that with a Cabernet. You can't start it at room temperature and then warm it up, because it would totally destroy the wine. Okay, so this is a lot more bready. A lot of yeasty notes. I feel like I'm in a bakery. It's a little bit of fruit on the back. I feel like there's some banana in here. Maybe a little pineapple, but ripe. And a tiny bit of cream, maybe yogurt. Something like that. Let's take a taste. Okay, so this is very dry. My tongue is kind of perked up a little bit, but I think it's going to be nice with this pairing. There's a little bit of olive oil in this pasta. This pasta, I didn't use gluten-free. I think it says here on the recipe that they use gluten-free. I didn't use a gluten-free pasta with this. I wanted to see what it would be like with the extra starch to go with the extra riciness of the sake. Interesting. Vegetal. Yeah, let's take a taste. If you're tasting along, let's do this. Make sure to get a bite with everything on it. Excuse the noise. Oh, that's lovely. So the green notes in the sake, banana, pineapple, I think are a lovely match with the green peas in here and the artichoke. The artichoke can be aggressive, but the sake sort of milds it down, kind of tones it down a little bit. What else? There's also lemon juice in here, which can be acidic, but it all works really nicely together, because I think of the starchier sake. It's a little heavier mouthfeel than the first sake we tried. And I think I've used this before in the wine, when I've described wine, that you should think of wine as a sauce for your food. And I think I just did that here with the sake. With this sake, it just kind of helped to round out the flavors of this veggie pasta. I think it was really delicious. I hope you find that it's delicious too, like that. Yeah. And of course, these recipes are very interchangeable. So if you don't like artichokes, if you don't like peas, you can always change them out for different things. And I think because sake is so food friendly, no matter what you substitute the vegetables with, you'll find a very harmonious pairing. Yeah. So now I'm going to just really quickly, before we go on to the next one, I'm going to pour my same sake into a little vessel here to warm it. I could just warm it in the bottle. I could just do that. It's a small bottle. I don't think I'd want to do that if it was a larger bottle.
And is that because you don't want to warm it and then not drink it all in one setting?
That's correct. That's correct. It might take a couple minutes to warm it up. I don't want to have dead air.
Well, I do have a quick question about that, Kelly.
Sure.
So sake, if you open a larger bottle, like a wine size 720 or 750, and you don't drink it all in one setting, what can it do in the refrigerator for how long, and
sure,
what happens to it?
Yeah, so another way that sake is different than wine is that sake does not have any tannins or any of these aging agents to help keep the sake longer. So if you open a bottle of wine, it could sit on the counter or in the refrigerator, but it has tannins and it has different things. It has alcohol, which sake does have, but it also can stay longer. sake, once it's open, it depends on the type of sake. So if you have a sake that's been unpasteurized, it's called namazake. This one needs to be drunk right away within 1 or 2 days. If you don't drink it all, it won't be good anymore. It won't be bad. It's not going to make you sick, but it won't have that freshness. And there are lots of yeasts in the sake that can go rogue, and they're volatile. So you can't really trust them. So most of the sakes that we have, and most of the sakes that are imported to the US, are pasteurized, just to help keep stability, just to help those rogue yeasts stay calm and collected. But the regular sake is made to be had. So the producer wants you to drink the sake right away. So if you have a big bottle, like Maricela said, and you only got through a little bit of it, it can keep. If once you keep it closed, or once it's open and you close it again, it can stay in a dark place, a dark, cool place, out of the sunlight for it could be maybe a month. I mean, or you can keep it in the refrigerator. I think that's it. I wouldn't want to go a little bit past that, because it doesn't retain as much freshness as it did when it was first opened. So like I said, it's not going to be bad. It's not going to make you sick, but freshness, I think about a month.
Yeah.
And sake, when you purchase a bottle of sake and you think, oh, I'm going to store this, I'm going to cellar it, as we say in the wine world, sake does not improve with time or with age. So you should drink it within a year. If it's not been opened, that's great. You should drink it within a year, maybe 2 years. Sometimes there are dates printed on the bottles of sake. Do you see that on yours, Maricela? Because I don't see, I mean, we have the same bottle.
I was looking at that. The only bottle that I see with a date on it is the Nigori, mine has April 2021. That does not mean it expired in April 2021.
It means it means that that's when it came out of the brewery. That's the date that's stamped on there. Is that correct? Mine says 12/20. So within a year, this should be drunk. So I'm not going to try to drink this in 2022, because it's not going to be as fresh as the brewer wanted it to be. Oh, okay. Let's see here. I think this is warm enough now. Oh, and also, if you warm your sake, I think it's important to drink from the little ceramic cup, because you don't want to put a warm sake in a white wine glass. I don't think that really works. Let's see. So I still have those bready, yeasty notes, but it's more soothing and calm. It's like, I don't get the fruit as much, but there's a little bit more acid on here when it's warm. I think if I warmed it up a little bit more, I think it might change the characteristic of the sake even more than it is. But temperatures are really important. Temperature plays a huge part of your sake enjoyment. So I think I'm going to put this back in here in the warm water and see how it does through our tasting. We don't have a lot more time, but I want to try it a little bit warmer too. Awesome.
Should we move on to the next one?
Yes, please.
So the next, I'm getting a little organized. The next recipe we had was the salmon. Majuko, I think, is going to put that up. And this is from the Kurosawa Nigori that we have. And you've talked a little bit about Nigori. It's a salmon patty. I have mine here. This is the one that I made. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this is in Nagano. So you can see, if you don't mind me showing this. Nagano is in the middle of Japan. It is landlocked prefecture. And hold on one second. There we go. And this brewery is a little bit different. So earlier I mentioned, these breweries have been around for a long time, passed down through many generations. This story came about a little bit differently. There was a Japanese importer, so he worked with exporting sake around the world, and he really had this idea that he wanted to find the most perfect sake. And so this was about 1996. His name is Jun Tanaka, and he started visiting the Nagano mountainous region. And this area is known for mountains, resorts, and the onsens, the spas, and the springs that are so popular around the resort areas. He started visiting this brewery, and he just started working with the brewery people and had them start tinkering and created the Kurosawa brew. And he had it named after the family, the Kurosawa family, which owned the brewery, and he thought that it should be named for them. And then he brought it to the market in 1998, the American market, and he was really intent on finding a sake that would complement American cuisines and American tastes. He was focused on bringing this sake to the American market. And it all coincided again with the Olympics, the 1998 Nagano Olympics. So the Olympics that year were in the prefecture, and that kind of gave them a boost of recognition. And it's a very popular because of its rich flavor, premium quality, and distinct naming and freshness. So that's a little bit about this one. And so this one, you see all the sediment at the bottom. I gently tip mine. I don't know how you do yours.
Yeah, a few shakes. Yeah, a few shakes.
I have to admit, I'm a big Nigori fan. I like the creamy sweetness. Nigoris can be a little, some people love them and some people are not a fan of it because there is more sediment in it, and it's just a very different. There's no white or red wine comparable in my understanding to something like this. But they're hearty to me, and I enjoy them.
Yeah. They're fun because you can have it with savory dishes, which is what we're doing tonight. And I've also had Nigori sake with chocolate.
Really?
I
would never say no to sake and chocolate.
It's sweet, it's creamy, it kind of goes.
Yeah. So this one has a lot of sort of creamy, chewy, umami flavor. And they suggest having it with, spicy foods. I think, I know that there's a hierarchy and you can say certain sakes go with certain foods. I say try them all with everything, but I will try mine with the salmon.
Okay.
And I plated mine with a little bit of greens.
Nice. I did not make this dish, so Maricela is going to lead us along on this Nigori sake.
Well, I'm just going to tell you, it's creamy and it's yummy, and
it
has a very citrusy flavor to me.
Yes.
Which I think works kind of well with the salmon and the fish. You have a little bit of that citrus taste to it.
Sure.
Anything you want to share about Nigoris?
Yeah, I was looking at the chat. Somebody asked a question about why do all sakes need to be filtered? Why is that the rule? That's kind of, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. That's a very good question.
I don't know that either. I don't know if it has something to do with pasteurization and, but I'm also happy to look that up. And if you're curious and you provide us your email address, I will definitely find an answer for you.
Yeah.
Are there other questions in there's a question to answer box. Do you want to?
Oh yeah, we can dig in there. Let's take a look.
I don't know if Madoka or Paul want to read these out.
Please feel free. You can go ahead and read and go through.
Okay. So where can you buy Sake Platinum in the US? Well, Sake Social. Sorry. To be honest, I'm only familiar with our site in terms of, you can certainly buy some sakes at your local liquor store, at Whole Foods. I do say that with a little bit of caution, because if there's not a high turnover rate of the sake that you're buying in in a grocery store, in a large wine or beer or liquor store, I'm always a little cautious about people buying it, and because it's been sitting there too long. Sure. We are very careful at Sake Social about buying in small batches from the breweries in Japan and making sure that we sell everything that we purchase in a timely way, so that whatever comes to your house, comes fresh. The worst thing to do is to get something that you've longed for and paid money for and not have it be fresh. So, see the next question.
Are we going in order of the questions here? I think I'm a little bit lost. Okay. Yes. Okay.
This is, in supermarkets, we can find many kinds of sake, but it is difficult to understand what kind of feature each sake has. Without teachers at the store, how can we understand each sake's characteristics at store? Only I do this by guessing in the packaging. Does Sake Social provide visitors any recommendations and explanation of sake? So there's two questions here. At Sake Social, we do. We have some pretty good filters on our search engine that help you figure out what works with the kind of wines or the kind of beer that you like, or what food you'd want to pair it with, or prefixtures. So we can help you with that. And also every one of our product pages has information about where it comes from and a little bit about the brewery. Kelly, I'm going to let you answer the second question about, if you're just going into a store, what do you look for to buy, and how do you make your selection?
Sure. A lot of times it can be tricky because it's in Japanese and not all of us speak Japanese. But I think American labels on the back, they try to give as much description as possible, which is why we kind of went through it really quickly. I think that's what we're trying to do. Let me check one thing here. Excuse me. Yes, I'm just pulling a random bottle of sake that's behind me. This is also from Manotsuru from Sake Social, and it's a larger bottle, but it does have some information on the back. This is not one of the ones we're featuring tonight, but it does have some good information here. And it tells you the dryness of, I guess it's a little bit difficult to see the color here, but if you know it's a premium sake, if it says Ginjo or Daiginjo on it, it's going to be one of the first ones that we tried, which was this one. It's going to be a clearer sake, a more aromatic sake, elegant, light. And if it's going to be a cloudy sake, it's going to show you that. It's going to be a little funkier. So if you're not sure, look for something that says Ginjo, Ginjo on it, because that's going to give you a good place to start if you're not sure. It's not going to be one of the funky ones, one of the ones where you kind of go, I think I could like this. It's going to be a little bit easier for your palate if you're new to sake. I think that's the best way I can explain it to you. Look for a premium sake, Ginjo. That's very important.
Yeah. Why have you become a big fan of sake? Kelly, I'll let you go first.
Okay. Before I was in the sake world, I was a sommelier, and before that I was a chef. So food and wine have this wonderful way of getting together and making beautiful, happy, harmonious meals and friends. So I kind of went from being a chef to a sommelier, and I was into the wine, and I realized, hey, I don't know very much about sake. And I had an opportunity to work with my friend Maricela at Sake Social, and this is how I fell in love with it. And then it reminded me of all my experiences in Japan with sake and how I didn't really know about it, but now I have a chance to learn and to share with you what I'm learning. So that's how I fell into it.
I am a big fan of sake. I am a bigger fan of Japan. So when I went to Japan for the first time in 2008, this is right around the time that we started sake, my husband and I, and we just immersed ourselves in learning everything that we could about the business. But you can't sell something like this and not share, the culture and everything that goes behind this. These are small breweries. They're not huge industrial settings. There's such a connection with the environment and the land. And just the more and more I learned about it, the more curious I became. And Kelly and I talk about this all the time. I am not a sommelier, I am not a sake expert, and I am not from Japan, but I'm learning alongside my customers, and I'm trying to help them not be intimidated by it and be curious and want to experiment and try and share it and just give it a shot. I don't think there are any rules, and I don't think it should be anything serious. I think it should be fun. So there's nothing funner than sharing sake.
Absolutely. I agree. It's so food friendly. So even with the recipes that we have, if you feel like trying any one of these sakes with a pizza, go for it. If you want to try it with boiled chicken or in a soup, go for it. I think it would be amazing. There are little guidelines that we had to go with these recipes, but I think in the end, you should just be adventurous. And it's a lot more freeing than wine. With wine, you have a lot of rules. You can't do this, you can't do that. And you're like, I want to try this with different things. And you can do that with sake. You can be a little bit more adventurous. What's the worst that can go wrong? You have some extra sake that you can share with your neighbors, you know?
And if you don't like it, most of the bottles are beautiful.
Yes, for sure. Yes, Paul.
I was just going to share, we had some questions that came on the chat as well.
Oh.
So one of the questions was, are there resources, I think perhaps like newsletters, that talk about sake in the same way that you would see for wine?
Oh.
Any that you might happen to know of, if there are any.
There are. I'm just trying to find here.
There's sake, I think there's the Sake Times.
The Sake Times, yeah.
There's a, right now, I think if you go on, to be honest, Instagram has a lot of great resources in terms of people are doing a lot of tasting and, bottle opening, and they'll do little reels that kind of break it down in bite-sized, digestible ways. But as far as besides the Sake Times, I'm not familiar with any other ones.
Sake Today, I think, is one other one. I was just looking it up to make sure I had the correct ending. I thought it was Sake Right Now, but it's Sake Today. That's good. And I think Instagram is great too. There are a lot of people who are doing, like Maricela said, little snippets, videos, and there are a lot of people in Japan who have their feet on the ground and who are doing amazing things over there. I don't have a whole list of them, but we do follow them, and we do learn a lot from them too.
And I can share, we had a speaker last year who actually has a magazine called Sake World. And so I did post that in the chat box if anyone wants to check that out.
Fantastic.
We had another question about yakitori. Are there any sakes or perhaps even a style or grade of sake that you recommend for yakitori?
Nigori sake. Definitely Nigori sake. It's sweet and it matches with the sticky soy saucy sweetness of the yakitori. Yakitori is the chicken on a stick, grilled chicken. I think Nigori sake would be perfect.
We also had a question about warming up the sake. I know you had a small ceramic cup, Kelly, but are there any other ways? Obviously, you mentioned that you do not want to warm it up in a wine glass. But great. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Tokori. These are ceramic vessels. They have a little spout. You can pour your sake inside and you can stick it in. I wouldn't put it in the microwave. Some people have done that successfully, but it's an uneven heating process. So if you have a pot of boiling water that you remove from the heat and then you add your vessel to the hot water, it'll warm your sake within a few minutes, and that's perfect in a vessel. Or if a bottle is small enough, then we can do it. I'm sorry, this is not the right sake. This one. If the bottle is small enough, you can warm the bottle, immerse it in the hot water. You don't need any special equipment for it. What you have at home is sufficient.
So heating it like baby milk.
Correct.
Like baby formula, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked, how do you drink?
I saw also a question from Amy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, please go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Kelly.
Maki,
go ahead. You can answer.
Yes, Maki said, how do we drink Nigori sake? Nigori sake should be, you should just shake it gently. I think she might have asked the question before we opened the bottle. So I would just give it a few gentle shakes. There are no bubbles in this sake, so you don't need to worry about, the kind of explosion there. So just a few gentle shakes and serve chilled. That's how you enjoy Nigori sake for Maki.
I think also we had a question, I believe it was from Joe, about the Nigori. It doesn't say on the bottle how polished it is.
Oh, interesting.
I saw you mentioned the grade. I think it was Honjozo for the crane sake.
Correct.
Do you happen to know
So
for this grade?
for this one, I believe it is also Honjozo style. 70%.
Mm-hmm.
It is? Okay, perfect. Yeah. To keep as much of the richness inside the sake. And once again, all sakes are required to be filtered. That's just sake making rules. These are filtered as well, but they're just passed through a much wider mesh so that the solids are able to fall through and that some are able to stay behind. And many times the producers will take the rice solids and add them back to the filtered sake. So it's been filtered, but it's also had the sediments added to it again for Nigori sake.
And I did see that question actually was from Amy, but Joe actually did have another question about the term Nigori, and he was wondering what it means, and then is it a common type of sake?
That's from Maricela. This is Maricella's favorite sake.
So Would you say this again?
Yes, Joe was curious about the term Nigori, if it has a meaning, and then also how common Nigori is among sakes.
And I'll let you comment on the meaning of the name. It's my understanding that Nigori is much more popular in the United States than it is in Japan.
Yes.
I don't know if that's because in Japan, you would want to have a more refined sake. Sake is, as Kelly mentioned earlier, more ceremonial. And so this is, not as refined. But it made its way into the American market space and it's very popular. I think there's a novelty to it. You just don't have anything like that in other beverages.
Sure. And Nigori, the meaning in Japanese means cloudy. And that's what the sake is. It's cloudy. Nigori sake.
And thank you. The last question I see that we have not already covered is about the polishing process. So perhaps Kelly, you can describe this. Where does the polished part go? Is it used for anything? And I think Maricela probably talked about some crackers as well. Yeah, but please go ahead.
Sure, absolutely. So the rice is polished either at the brewery. Some breweries have a mill, and others have a miller do it for them. And the rice is polished. So all rice, no matter what kind of rice you're talking about, sake rice, table rice, is always brown. So there's a husk, and there are the outer layers, which are the proteins and the fats, and then the inner layers are the core starches. So what happens with the husk? The bran and the husk are used in animal feed or even bran oil. So if you're ever at the market, it doesn't need to be a specialty market. You can find bran oil anywhere, and that's exactly where it comes from. Brown rice. Okay, and then all of the other the shavings of the rice, they can be used for that are not used for sake, right? The ones that are polished away, they're used for rice flour or for making rice beer. So there are a lot of applications. None of it goes to waste. Japanese people do not like to waste, especially in this area, because we talked about rice is very sacred. And they're very grateful and thankful to God for providing the rice for them. It's not a religious thing. It's just, that's who they think provided to them. So they want to be as smart with their leftovers as possible and use them in different ways. And I think when Maricela was mentioning the rice cracker or the cracker, it was from after the sake has been filtered. There's or after it's been mashed. Is that what it is, Maricela? Is that what they used? Yeah.
It was the mash. It was the leftover.
The mash. Okay.
Yeah.
So nothing's wasted.
Great. And just one other thing that I saw, a question that came across the chat, was where to purchase sake within the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Obviously, we encourage you to support our partner, Sake Social. So they do have the website that we put on there, sakesocial.com, and that's been put in the chat box. And we also will include a link to that on the post event email, which will go out on Monday. But in terms of if you do want to purchase something on site, Mitsuya Marketplace is a location that we recommend. That's in Plano. It's kind of Eastern Plano. There are many restaurants around Dallas-Fort Worth, so it's hard to choose just one. But yeah. So Kelly or Maricela, do you have any closing comments before we move to the final part of the program?
I think it's just really simple. Sake doesn't have to be complicated in your life. Try to incorporate it with your meals. Mac and cheese, pizza we talked about. Yes, sushi. Yes, Japanese food. But try it with other things too, because it can go surprisingly well with dishes that you may not have thought go well together. Enjoy. Kampai.
Yep. That's same for me. Be curious. Be adventurous. There are no rules. Just have fun with it. It's sake.
Yes. Yes. And we're always here if you have questions.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Maricela and Kelly. We appreciate spending at least part of your Friday evenings with us. And we're really, we really enjoyed this program. I'm sure that the attendees here really loved what they could learn. We also want to thank the attendees for being there or being here for our program and be willing to learn. So thank you so much. We're really excited to know that all these foods compare well with sake.
Absolutely.
So now I know, just give a moment for Mudoka to bring up the screen. I'd like to share some upcoming programs. Great, just give a moment. Okay, wonderful. So I mentioned an in-person event. So we did have one in-person event recently. It was a fundraiser golf classic. But in terms of a public program, I guess anyone was able to come to the golf classic, but this is available at a lower price tag as well. But so we're going to have our annual Japan America Friendship Night. We did not have this last year because people could not go into the baseball stadium. And so this will be the first time in about 2 years. And we're excited to have this also. The team playing the Rangers will be the Los Angeles Angels. And one of the players is Shohei Ohtani, who I imagine many of you have heard about. He actually made history earlier this week. He both pitched and hit in the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. That is the first time that's ever happened in the history of baseball. So we're really excited to have that. And if another reason to come, not just for seeing Ohtani, but this is the new stadium for the Rangers. So it actually opened last year, but people weren't really able to go into it much. So if you want to see the new stadium, if you haven't seen it yet, please come to our game. The tickets you see there are $60. They're in the batter's eye section, which is directly above center field. And what's nice as well is they include $25 of concessions and souvenirs. So if you want to pick up a T-shirt, a hot dog, anything, you have a $25 voucher that is available to you because of that ticket. Right. So moving on to our next program. This will be an online event, so please note that this is an online program, and that's because we're going to have speakers from 5 different places around the globe participate in this event. And this will be focusing on. Sorry, I have a boy kind of here. It's part of being online. So we do have an online program September 16th. This will be focusing on U.S.-Japan space relations and collaboration. We'll be looking at the commercial part of that, as well as the security alliance and how it relates to the U.S.-Japan connection. Great. And then moving on to the last event that I'm going to talk about for today. This is our annual award dinner. We have not had an award dinner since spring of 2019, so we're really excited to have this. We will have this on October 4th at the Omni Frisco Hotel. We will be honoring, you can see there, Ambassador Kenichiro Sasai and his wife Nabuko, and then Anna McFarland as well, who's our former executive director. Another program that we don't have a slide for, but we are planning for our more Japanese language classes. So we do have a current session that is sold out, but we're looking to add more starting in kind of the September range. So please, you can check JASDFW.org for all this information as we share our programs, and you can learn about everything we do there as well. So I could say thank you so much to everyone who joined the program today. I hope you enjoyed it as well. We do have a survey that will pop up. Some of you have already left, I guess, but it will pop up in your browser once the program ends. So please fill it out so that we can get more information about what we do and we can make these programs even better. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your evening. And this concludes the program, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.